Ken and I were part of a discussion this past week up at Fulmut. He and I go up on a Thursday evening and to Fulmut to present an Alpha course with a youth leadership program. And Ken takes half the group and I take the other half. And the question came up in my group this past week. And the question was very simple. And for a moment, I kind of stood back and think, now, what is the real question here? The question was, what is silence? What is silence? And we reflected for a few moments around that. What is silence? And the fact that there seems in the practice of our faith to be very little silence. And then they said, interestingly enough, that they had been part of a Bible study group earlier that day, that was Thursday, in which the speaker had said that silence is God's first language. All right? And again, we reflected on that. Silence is God's first language. Not that he doesn't want to speak, but that there is just about God a deep sense of silence, equilibrium, oneness within himself. I appreciate silence. I think the older we get, we enjoy silence more and more. There's just too much noise, too much talking. I think it was some famous English writer, G.K. Chesterton, who once spoke about poor, talkative Christianity. We're always talking. And I think we don't allow enough time for silence and quietness. And we hear the scriptures, Psalm 46, be still and know that I am God. And one of the other Psalms where it says, for you, O Lord, my soul waits in silence. In quietness and in confidence, trusting shall be your strength. It's not easy to be silent, because even when we are still, the kind of noise in our head and the turmoil in our hearts takes a while just to subside. And slowly you begin to center down, and begin to know and to discern a deeper dimension, which is the presence of God, the Holy Spirit. I want us to be still for a few moments as a prelude to us singing Heilig, Heilig, Heilig. 2 verses, a very deep and reverential hymn that we sing. So friends, this morning I'd like to read a few words and verses from the book of Acts, in a passage that I find remarkably relevant to life in 2019. I have a note right at the front of my Bible that I wrote here many years ago, a quote by Martin Luther. The Bible is alive. It speaks to me. It has feet. It runs after me. It has hands. It lays hold on me. All right, let me read that again. I like that. The Bible is alive. It speaks to me. It has feet. It runs after me. It has hands. It lays hold on me. And here's a passage amongst many passages that really does speak to me. And it's the story of what happened when Paul goes to Athens. Now, Paul was a great traveler. He has this great desire to share the good news about Jesus. And I underline that word, the good news about Jesus. And he was just so energetic. No destination was too far for Paul. He had this burning heart. He simply had to share what was in his heart. And on one occasion, he goes to Athens. Now, Athens in those days, you will remember, was synonymous with culture and everything that was refined. There were clever people in Athens. We think of Athens in terms of the great Greek philosophers. And it was a sort of pinnacle of ancient civilization was Greece. And while he's in Athens, waiting for some of his Mikeys, he's looking around like anybody would do if they went to Athens. Paul was waiting for them, and you'll read this in Acts chapter 17. He was waiting for them in Athens. While he was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace, day by day, with those who happened to be there. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to dispute with him. Some of them asked, "What is this babbler trying to say?" Others remarked, "He seems to be advocating foreign gods." They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. Then they took him and brought him to a meeting of the Areopagus, where they said to him, "May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? You are bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we want to know what they mean." Now, all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but drinking coffee, talking about, well, it doesn't say that, but you know, doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. And Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus. That's there just below the Acropolis. People been to Athens? I've never been to Athens. Been to Greece? Yeah, some of you have, so you know exactly. In fact, this passage is written there just below the Acropolis. You'll see this Acts 17. So Paul gets up, and maybe we'll get to actually what he says, but I want to pause. It might have to go into next week, this one. But I want to pause there. Firstly, the burning heart of Paul. The burning heart of Paul. This man was a Christian and a follower of Jesus. Yes, he had a Jewish background, but you know what had happened to him on the road to Damascus. He had been on his way to Damascus to arrest and probably eliminate these followers of Jesus, and then God took hold of him and his life was turned around. Remember, he was Saul before he became Paul, and the light shines from heaven. He falls off his horse. "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Why are you persecuting me?" And it was a signal moment in Saul's life. His life is turned around, and he becomes this deeply, deeply committed man with this burning love for Christ and a desire to share the good news of Jesus. And wherever he went, he took the opportunity. He wasn't always given the reception that he'd hoped for. Lots of people turned on him. They pounced on him. he received opposition everywhere he went. And I guess it's no different in our day and age. Don't think that we've got the gospel in our heart and everybody is dying to hear the gospel. They're not. Let's not fool ourselves. Paul got a hostile reception in so many places. And he is quite open in one of the letters that he wrote. He says, you speak about the cross, and they're going to laugh. They're going to say, it is ridiculous. Please, where do you come up with this nonsense that a man on a cross could actually save the world? I mean, if you put it down on cold, write it down in cold words, it does sound absurd, really. I mean, when you think about it, some guy from some remote corner of the Roman Empire called Palestine dies on a cross, like many, many people died on a cross. And you want to tell me that that Jewish rabbi, that Jewish teacher, way on the Chamadulas down the Durgan at the bottom of the empire can actually, come on, what are you smoking? And so Paul says, don't think they're all going to receive you with open arms. They're going to dismiss it as complete foolishness. Complete foolishness. So Paul knew what he was letting himself in for. But he wasn't intimidated by that. He believed so deeply and passionately that though it sounds absurd, it's actually true. For the foolishness of the cross, and Paul recognizes that it's foolishness, the foolishness of the cross is to them, for the preaching of the cross, is to them that are perishing, foolishness. I mean, it's absurd. But to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. Now, let's be honest, there are some things that don't make sense in life. Whilst they don't make sense, at the same time, they're real and they are powerful. I mean, that symbol over there. To those who are perishing, complete nonsense. But for us who are being saved, it represents, it kind of brings to us the very power of God. So Paul is in Athens, and he's speaking to, we are told, 4 groups of people. He's speaking to the Jews first in the synagogues and in the public places, and they're probably saying, oh, come on, give me a break. But we read there he debates with them. Now, I don't know what kind of debater Paul was. He was a very bright man. I mean, one of the founders of Western civilization. I would say that would be a fair appraisal of Paul. So he's a seriously bright man, and he's talking about Jesus, and for them the thought of a Messiah who got crucified, no, that is nonsense. A Messiah would be somebody who was triumphant, somebody filled with glory, somebody who would be synonymous with victory and the restoration of the kingdom to Israel. They don't come with a crucified Messiah. And what Paul said to them, exactly what he says to the Jews, we don't know, but he probably took them into Isaiah 53, where, who has believed our report, you know? He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Probably Paul brought that passage as he is discussing with them. But they probably just shrugged their shoulders, and said, sorry, we can't see it like you do. And the gospel doesn't always get that kind of, and they all praise God like it happened on the day of Pentecost. One sermon, 3,000 people came to the knowledge of Jesus. Didn't happen like that in Athens for Paul. There are some people who just don't get it. And you can talk to your blue in the face, and they don't get it. Maybe they're not interested, and so it's a lost cause from the very outset. But Paul always tried. Such was the burning message of Jesus in his heart. And the Jews of Athens, very nice, decent people, they didn't give him a rough time as far as we know. They probably gave him a reception. He went to the synagogue. He was still in that routine, you know. He went to the synagogue, as was his practice. He went to the synagogue, and he's talking. So the Jews didn't take him on board. Then we have God-fearing Greeks. God-fearing Greeks. These were people whose hearts were open. They had a sense that there is another reality. You know, I come across lots and lots of people who may not identify themselves as Christians, but they're very open to things spiritual. And you feel, if you can just walk a long enough journey with them, because they have a sense of spiritual realities. And in conversation, you can often just begin to make headway and progress with these folk. They have an open heart. They are people who are searching. Be gentle with such folk. Be gentle. Because you too were a seeker at one point. And you too in due course came to the knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. It may have taken you a while, and it may take other folk a while. People who have a sense of someone, something. And they're looking. And then the third group that we find here, we are told at Athens, people with whom Paul engaged were the Epicureans. Epicureans. Now, what did they believe? And I must say, I find them very interesting. Because here were people who believed in the absolute nature or the absolute principle of pleasure and self-gratification. They wouldn't want to hurt anybody, you know. It's those people who say, I do my own thing, and you do your thing, and I won't interfere with you, and please don't you interfere with me. I will just do my own thing. It's very much eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. And life is about drawing maximum pleasure for however many days that you have. The soul dies when you die. You cease to exist. And so we are going to make merry for as long as we can, because it's not going to last forever. And we're going to make hay while the sun shines. They really didn't believe in any kind of deity. It was very much people who were preoccupied with themselves. Have you met people like that? Shoo. I met plenty of people like that, for whom it's all about pleasure and entertainment. And there was really little purpose in life beyond that. Now, some people, believe it or not, find that very attractive. Very attractive. I mean, somebody comes to you and says that, how would you respond to somebody like that? Just leave me, Paul, I respect you. You know, you do your thing, please, but don't come into my space with this stuff about Jesus. Just recognize that I'm in this life for pleasure. Because it ain't going to last. I didn't ask to be born. And I don't know when I die. But I am here. And I am going to milk it. Eat, drink, and be merry. For tomorrow, we die. Now, this self-gratification would take some pretty bizarre and probably clearly, not probably, immoral things. I mean, it turned out to be a very decadent way of looking at things. But there were others who felt that self-gratification was kind of pursuing an aesthetic life, kind of preoccupied with things like beauty, and so it didn't always turn out to be decadent. So you've got the Epicureans, and it's still sometimes a label of affection that you bring. He's a real Epicurean, you know. He likes good food, and he likes the finer things of life, and he likes plenty of women as well. The Epicureans. And Paul is speaking. I mean, this could be 2019. And then you've got the Stoics. The Stoics. And Paul speaks to them as well. Now, who are the Stoics? Now, you know, listen, believe me, I'm only giving you sort of a few sentences about these people. It was a lot deeper than I'm even suggesting, but we only don't have that kind of time. The Stoics. I'll be honest, I sometimes admire the Stoics. It's kind of, let life be what life is. No, don't interfere. There's a rational principle in life, you know, and just connect with that rational principle of life. And I mean, all this thing about God and if there is a God, and it was a big if, he's really not involved. Life just continues. It continues. And there is this sort of way life is. Such is life, and you must slot into it. And you remember, it matters, who was it? Sir Henry Newbolt? It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. It's me. Nobody's going to help me. And I'm not there necessarily, although they did sometimes help one another, because that seemed to make sense in terms of the way we ought to live. We might characterize this as a summons to bravery. Bravery, stiff upper lip. It's about you, buddy, and your reactions. Nobody's going to help you. God ain't going to help you. Nobody's going to help you. It's about fate. And your time is coming, and there's nothing that you can do about it. At a certain time, at a certain date, at a certain hour, you will leave this world. I'm not sure exactly what happened to what they believed about that. The Epicureans said, you cease to exist. The Stoics, to be honest, I sometimes quite admire the Stoics. You've got to be brave. Oh, you've got to be brave. So much of this life you didn't ask for, but it comes your way, and you've got to have broad shoulders, keep your chin up, take it on the chin if necessary, and just keep going forward. Does that appeal to you? Appeals to me. I mean, let's be honest. And if we scratch around, we probably think, well, that may just describe me in many ways. So you've got those four groups: the Jews, the God-fearing Greeks, the Epicureans, and the Stoics. And what do we read about what Paul said to them? Did you pick it up as we read? So he says here, they were Jews and God-fearing Greeks in the marketplace, and he discusses with them day by day. And a group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to dispute with them. They said, what is this babbler trying to say? They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. That's a great phrase, the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. Now, let me ask you a question. And honestly, in your heart of hearts, I don't expect you to get up and say it, although we could. But do you experience your faith, your Christian faith, as something supremely good? Supremely good. Because Paul, we're told, doesn't give them a philosophical lecture. He doesn't. He's a bright man, but he doesn't necessarily go the academic route. He says, guys, I refer you. He says, he shared with them the good news about Jesus. So somebody comes to you at lunchtime today, all right? Somebody comes to you and says, oh, I believe you were at church this morning. Why are you a Christian? What is it about the Christian faith that you kind of devote so much of your time and your energy to it? What for you is the good news about being a Christian? And I think it's quite important that we try and articulate that, because somebody's going to ask you sometime, your children or your grandchildren, what is it? And you may not always have the answers in terms of philosophy, because there are some very clever people out there, and I'm not in any way intimidated by clever philosophical people, not at all, not in the slightest. Sometimes we don't know what to say when people kind of give you the arguments, and you think, oh dear, it's been a while since you were involved in that kind of. But if somebody did ask you, what is it about your faith? Why are you a Christian? Why? What would you say? What might you begin to say? And they were listening to you. What for you is the good news about Jesus? That you should identify yourself as a Christian, and that you gather with the people of God on a Sunday to be part of this fellowship. And I give you homework. I really want you to think about that one. Really, really think about. And Paul told them the good news, shared with them the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. The two are very important. Very, very important. Because it says a number of things. Jesus and the resurrection suggest to us that Jesus is alive. He is alive. All right? Now, people may say, oh, come on. Are you serious? Never be ashamed simply to share the most basic elements of your faith, that Jesus is alive. Do not be embarrassed. Do not be scared. Just say it quietly, looking at somebody in the eye. You say, you know what? The good news for me about Jesus is that he is alive. And because he is alive, and then you can go on to say all manner of things that are naturally going to be very closely correlated to how you found Jesus. So ask a man like Simon Peter, who really disappointed Jesus the night before he was crucified. Ask Simon Peter about his experience of Jesus, and Simon Peter might tell you, yeah, I really disappointed him. I stabbed him in the back. I didn't just walk away, I denied him 3 times. And then on the shores of Galilee a few days later, do you know what? He forgave me. What I thought was a complete disaster. I mean, what I'd done was totally unacceptable. And now, he has forgiven me. And you could ask Peter all manner of things. There would have been that time in his life when it was about forgiveness. Forgiveness. They say Peter eventually died by being crucified upside down. This is the story that is told. Whether it's true, we can't be 100% sure. And they wanted to crucify Peter, and Peter said, "Crucify me with my head downwards. My Lord died with his head up, and I'm not worthy to die as he died." And so so he knows that he has to die. He's dying. He's dying. And he knows the difference that Jesus makes when it comes to die. I mean, it really is a huge difference. I quite frankly would find the thought of dying and death terrifying without Jesus. I really would. I really, really would. But I hear him say, "Let not your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me." And you know that one, in my Father's house. I am the way. I am the way. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore, and I hold the keys. I want to know Jesus in his resurrection power when it comes to my time. Precious Lord, take my hand. You know that song? Lead me on, lead me on, lead me on. Let me stand. I am weak, I am tired, I am whatever. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me on. And Paul is speaking about this. He's sharing good news. Now, good news is not just news, it's good news. So there's a value to it. It's good news. I've experienced something, and it is good. Seriously good. And doubtless Paul is speaking about all manner of things. So I want each one of you just to think about what it is about your faith that is really important. Really important. What is good? What do you experience as something wonderful? Something wonderful. I mean, why shouldn't I adopt the Epicurean philosophy and just become self-indulgent? I, me, mine. Why not take that on board? I think, what purpose would that give me in terms of a grand vision for my life? Man, I've got more self-respect than that. It's not just about me. One day I'm going to stand in front of my Maker. No, I'm going to kneel in just gratitude and love before my Maker. And I will know that I'm not there because of anything I've done that has impressed him, but it will be his grace. But man, I just want to be able to go into that glory land and know that my life has meant something. And God says, well done, good and faithful servant. And to the Stoics, why don't I just buy into that? But I don't want my life to be the victim of fate. I don't believe in fate. I believe at the very heart of the universe, the very heart of all things, in all reality, is a loving God. The Father's heart is towards us, his people. I don't believe in fate. I don't sing when I get up in the morning, que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. I want to say, my times are in your hands, dear Lord. I put my hand in the hands of the man who stilled the water. I'll put my hand in the hand of the man who calmed the sea. That's what I'll do. Makes a big difference. No, I'm not looking for a crutch. I don't consider myself to be some sort of feeble individual who kind of holds on to Jesus. Believe me, there are times you have to do that. But there is a God who has given to us his Son, Jesus, who raised him from the dead. He is the foundation. The foundation. And that is where Paul starts. He goes on to speak a great sermon, which didn't get much of a reaction, I might add. But this is now who he's talking to in Athens. Jews, God-fearing Greeks, Epicureans, and Stoics. Impressive people in their own way, but in comparison with the good news of Jesus and the resurrection, oh my goodness, there is no comparison. So, got your homework? Just think. Maybe around the lunch table or somewhere, just talk. Why? Just talk. Rather than sit there and watch Mr. Dingo or something. Just talk about it. What is it? That is good news. Good news of Jesus and the resurrection. Amen.